Welcome to Coffee and Conversation for ESL Listening. I'm Donielle.
And I'm Khrystyna, so grab a cup and join the conversation.
Hey, Khrystyna. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you? How have you been?
Good. I know you've been busy, super busy. When I talked to you, you were kind of running around crazy, and we had to kind of squeeze this podcast recording in. So stay awake for us, okay?
Yes, I'll stay awake. Yeah, it's been pretty busy here with work and everything, but that's okay. I know quiet times are coming. At least that's what I keep telling myself. But
Yeah.
what's going on with you? What's new? I haven't talked to you in a while.
Yeah, it's been a couple weeks. Yeah, not really a whole lot except I don't know, you probably are aware that it's Mardi Gras time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I know that isn't something they really, you know, think about or
Yeah.
celebrate over there, but down here it's a huge thing. And on Sunday, I went to a parade and I went to my very first Mardi Gras ball.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, it's kind of a big deal because you have to be invited by
Oh.
someone who is in the parade. And so I have a French student, and her friend was kind enough to invite us to the ball, and we had a ball.
You had a ball at the ball. Oh my gosh. Okay, so tell me more about it. And it was in Alabama, right? In your town, or
In
was it?
Mobile,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So what kind of ball is it? Is it like a formal thing where you had to dress up and there's all sorts of dancing and fancy food, or is it like more of a casual thing?
Well, the dressing up is very fancy. I don't know if you can see, but I got my nails done. They're all sparkly and
I noticed that. I was like, "Ooh, I rarely see you get your nails done," but I was like, "There has to be some reason for it." But
yeah.
Valentine's Day is coming up, so I thought maybe you're preparing for that too.
Oh yeah. Well, you remember last year I went to a quinceañera and I bought a fancy dress for that.
Oh
And
yeah.
I said, man, I better find some other occasion to wear this thing, you know? And I sure did. So I wore the same dress. Yay.
Oh, very nice. Did your husband go with you too?
No, it
Oh
was,
no.
he's not really into that kind of thing. But it was a friend of mine who also knows my student and
Mhm.
kind of a small network over here. But yeah, so we went and it is fancy. You have to dress up, dancing, food, drinks, that kind of thing, and a very, um, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's kind of a strange ceremony.
Oh,
Yeah, that they do. They've got a king and a queen, and then they bring out all of the people from
court.
the floats. They're called
Oh,
crews, and it's just this big extravagant thing. So it was pretty cool and something new.
that's interesting. I've never heard of this before.
No,
Like, I've
yeah.
never heard of Mardi Gras ball.
Oh, it's
Like,
huge. Yeah.
yeah, I know that there's parades and all that.
Mhm.
And the funny thing is, knowing you, as soon as you said Mardi Gras, my first thought was like, no way, she just went to New Orleans.
No. I know. Well, a little bit of history here. Mardi Gras is famous in New
Mhm.
Orleans for sure. I mean, if you
Mhm.
think of Mardi Gras, you think of New Orleans, but Mobile is actually the birthplace of Mardi Gras. A lot of people don't know that. And they're
Really?
very proud of that here, that
Aw,
that this is the original Mardi Gras place. So,
interesting. Very
yeah.
interesting. All right. Hey.
So yeah, that was my weekend, and so now we have a topic today. It's a little bit different. We are going to talk sort of about housing, about apartments, about rentals, and we'll talk a little bit about in the United States, maybe versus other places.
Mhm.
It could be a really huge topic, so we're going to kind of narrow this down based on a news article that I read, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But to begin, let's just talk a little bit about renting apartments.
Oh
In the
gosh.
United States, have you rented an apartment?
I have. I actually, the very first place I lived at when I moved here, when I got married, was an apartment in a small town. like not far from here. That's where my husband got his first job after graduating from law school. So when we moved, the funny story is because he was in Ukraine, we were getting married and all that stuff. His mom actually went to that small town to find an apartment for us.
Oh,
So when we came, we had a place to stay.
that's
Well,
good.
it
Mhm.
was good. And it was a nice apartment. However, sad story. So we moved into that apartment. We only had a couple of our suitcases and all that. We didn't have the furniture. But of course, we moved in there. We arrived on Sunday, and then my husband started his job on Monday. So I was there by myself, and I started cleaning and washing everything. I kind of wanted to make sure everything is to my standard.
I can see this.
And guess what? After I got all of that stuff, cleaning and all that stuff, and we kind of, we had a mattress. We slept for the few nights before the furniture arrived. We wake up in the morning and we notice roaches.
Oh no. No, no, no.
And I was like, oh no, we can't live here. And at first I was like, okay, maybe we can do something to get rid of them because I lived in a dorm before, so that wasn't something, it happened before. So I wasn't too surprised or freaked out by it. My husband absolutely lost his mind. Well, I mean, figuratively, but he just like, we cannot stay here another day. This we're not staying and all that stuff. Right. So we called the landlord right away. A landlord is a person who owns apartments, right, and then rents out to other people.
And you would be the
And
tenant. Yes.
we were the tenants. So we called him right away and told him what was going on and all that. And he moved us to a different apartment in a different building, different part of town. So he owned several apartment buildings throughout town. So he moved us to a different place, and he ended up being better for us because that place had a garage.
Oh.
The first place, it was just the outside parking, but that place actually had a garage with the apartment. So,
that's
and
nice.
that's where we stayed for a couple of years. Yeah, until we moved where we live now. And we rented apartment here too for a couple of years before we bought our first house. So yeah,
Okay.
I've been in several apartments. What about you?
Oh, I've been in more apartments than I could count. I have many, many, many apartments. Yeah, and it's interesting because there's kind of a reputation when you rent that the landlords are, really hard to deal with and you get a bad situation. And sometimes it does happen, but the reality is the law is pretty much on the tenant side for the most part. So like when you were saying that the landlord moved you to a better place, I'm not really surprised.
Yeah.
Because, you have certain expectations when you rent an apartment that you should be roach free for sure.
Well, and it's, for landlords, this is a way of, this is business for them, right? So
Yeah.
this is a way of making living, making money and all that. And if you have unhappy tenants, they will go and find a different landlord if,
Yes.
if there is a possibility. So, but okay, so I have another funny story. Our landlord in that apartment, he was kind of a strange guy. Like he was a little older and all that. So one day, it was in the middle of the day on Sunday, like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He knocks on our door. My husband opens the door and he's standing there with the plunger. And he goes, "Oh, you guys called and you needed to plunge the toilet." And my husband's like, "Well, no, we didn't call you." He's like, "No, no, you called. I'm going to go plunge your toilet." He just walks into an apartment and goes and starts plunging our toilet. And my husband both looked at each other like, "Is anything wrong with the toilet?" He's like, "No." And then he leaves. He just plunges the toilet, flushes a couple times, and then he walks out. It was the strangest thing I've ever experienced. We both sat, my husband and I both sat for like a few minutes after that, just trying to process what just happened.
That was weird. Somebody else must have called and he got confused who it was or something. Yeah.
I know. But he wasn't going to take no for an answer. He was determined to plunge the toilet, so he was going in.
You say that this has nothing to do with that at all, but I just remembered when you talk about having a funny story. I have a really funny story about renting. And this is not good. It's funny in retrospect, but it is not good. So
Uh-oh.
when I was living in Chicago, I
Mm.
was in this apartment building. I don't know if I ever told you this. It was an old hotel, I believe, that they converted into an
Ooh.
apartment. So, like when you go to, the main floor or something, and it would be this long hallway because
Oh my,
there's,
yeah.
apartment, apartment, apartment. It was like that, right? So I think it was 4 or 5 floors. I don't remember which one. And I lived on the 3rd floor. And I had gone out that evening with a friend of mine. We'd gone dancing. We used to go dancing all the time. And it was super late. It was probably like 1 o'clock in the morning when she came back with me. She was going to stay at my house.
Mhm.
So we got back and we were really tired. And I go to put my key in the door and it opens. I open up, quote unquote, my door and I see someone else's apartment.
Oh my gosh.
I nearly died. I was like, what? Well, what had happened was because all these floors look exactly the same, I went to the wrong floor. Yeah. But
Oh,
why did the key work? Why?
exactly. That is scary because
Yeah,
that person could just walk into your apartment and
exactly. I
so
mean,
what
I
did
was
you do?
horrified. Well, I quickly shut the door, locked it, and ran away because I thought, the person who lives in here, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. They're going to jump out probably with a baseball bat,
Oh my
something.
gosh.
Yeah, that was
Oh my
crazy.
gosh. Did you ever say anything to the landlord that,
You
the
know,
keys are the same?
I don't know why I didn't. I think because I was like in my
Freaked
early
out.
20s and I think I was embarrassed
Mhm.
and I thought, "Oh, what a dumb thing." And how am I going to admit that I opened someone else's door? But I mean, I really should have because
My
that is
gosh.
not good.
So something similar, but I was on the receiving end of it. Like
Oh
somebody
no.
happened to me in our apartment we stayed here in town. And we had a very nice apartment here that we really liked. You know how sometimes maintenance people would go into apartments and like check on things or, like just the maintenance. Sometimes they check on heating or air conditioning or some sort of a water work. Well,
Right.
um, apparently there was some sort of a maintenance scheduled, but somehow we never got a notice for that. Because you most of the time the practice is that they will either contact you or leave some sort of a notice on your door that at this time maintenance will be coming and checking the thing.
Right.
Well, we never got that notice. So one morning I was at home, my husband was at work, and I was in the shower
Oh no.
getting ready for something. So I get out of a shower and I hear somebody walking up the stairs into apartment because we lived on the second floor, but the door was down the stairs,
Oh,
right?
okay. I know what you mean, yeah.
So I hear somebody is walking up the stairs and I mean I got scared to no end because somebody broke into apartment. What do I do? So I quickly get dressed and for some reason we always had a baseball bat by our bed.
Really did have a baseball bat.
Just in case, you never know,
That's
right?
sort of the, stereotype like you see in movies and stuff. Someone has a baseball bat, but
Yeah.
you really did.
We did. We lived that stereotype. So I grabbed this baseball bat and I slowly kind of creep around the corner from my room, holding the baseball bat like any minute ready to strike. And I
Strike.
jump out, and there's a man in my living room in the kitchen. And he jumps back. And I was like, "What are you doing here?" And he goes, "I'm maintenance. I'm checking on this and this. There was a notice that went out to everybody that I was going to check apartments." I was like, "I didn't get any notice." And he's like, "I am so sorry." So he gives me like the paperwork and all this stuff showing. And I was
Uh,
like, "You can't do this." Like, I was ready to whack you with this baseball bat.
yeah. Well,
I was,
even if they have given notice, they always knock on the door before they enter because you can
which they
really get
could
into
have.
a lot of trouble.
Right. They probably did, but I was in the shower, so I didn't hear them.
Oh, wow.
It's like, oh God. But
Oh,
you would
that
think if you walked into somebody's place and you hear them in the shower, you probably would either walk out or something, wouldn't. I was like,
you
oh
do like
my
I did. Quietly close the door back up and
and walk out.
go out.
So, something when we're talking about apartment living too, depends on where you live, like depends on the city or town you live. Sometimes they say, that their apartments are not always in a good area, like good neighborhood.
For sure.
Um, so it's almost like this kind of stigma that, sometimes if you're in an apartment, well, you never know if you're in a good neighborhood or not. And I think when you moved here, you stayed in an apartment that was in a little sketchy neighborhood.
I sure did. But I didn't even know. And one thing they do say, if you're looking for an apartment somewhere, you should always, any place you're considering renting, you should
Right.
always drive around at night
Yes,
because it could look fantastic during the day, but then the weird, sketchy stuff happens at night.
at night, right?
And we did
And
not do that.
usually they say that the price. You want to look at the rental price. If it's inexpensive or seems too good to be true, then usually
It
it's
probably is.
probably not a very good neighborhood. So
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely. Well, we didn't stay there very long because that was, I mean, it wasn't horrible, but it was just like, not really the best.
no, it's horrible.
Oh, it is? Okay. I think
I
I've
still hear I still hear stories.
lived worse in Chicago. That's why.
I yeah. I still read stories about things that happen in that
Oh
neighborhood.
gosh.
It's like,
I'm
oh
glad I
no.
didn't know.
Yeah. Sometimes it's good not to know.
Yes, ignorance is bliss, as they say. Well, at this rate, we're never going to get to our story, but
Oh gosh, I know.
this was interesting. So what we're going to talk about a little bit is a funny story that I read, and I know you've also read it too. And when I saw this story, I thought to myself, this just had to be the United States. I mean, this couldn't have happened anywhere else.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not literally, but it really screamed to me, oh, United States situation. And it has to do with renting. Now, one thing that we'll say is like when you are living someplace that's not your own, you're either staying with someone as a friend or you're renting, whatever it is, the law is kind of on your side, like I said earlier.
Right.
And if someone invites you to stay in their home, it's not so easy to make them go away.
Leave.
Yeah. You have to give what they call notice, and
Right.
you have to give them time to go find another place to live. And then after you've given them notice that they still haven't left, then you can move to evict them. And that means force them out through the courts. But imagine if you're doing this, if it's your own child that's living in your house.
That's, like that calls for all sorts of problems.
Yes. So this was a story that I saw about someone. I forgot to notice how old he was. I think he was
30.
30. Yes, he sure was. He was 30 years old, and I think for like 8 years, his parents were trying to get him out of the house to no avail. Yes. There's an expression, I don't know if you've heard of this, and there was a movie called this, failure to launch.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I watched it.
Oh, did you see the movie? I didn't see the movie, but I assume it's the similar topic that it's like you're a grown child who's having difficulty adjusting to adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
I can get that. Adulting is hard.
Yeah, but they don't want to leave the nest.
Don't want to leave the nest. Exactly. For
Bird
sure.
doesn't want to fly.
And Burton trying to push that little birdie out, but Birdie is like, nope, holding on with the claws. Nope. Yeah. So in this story, these parents, they sued. That means they filed a lawsuit, or they took their son to court. All of these things you can say to get the judge to order, get my kid out of my house. And eventually, because it had taken 5 months and the parents were just sick of it. 5 months they'd been giving notice multiple times. And they offered to help him with money to get organized. They gave him advice for how to get a job and get going. He just would not do anything. So this was kind of a last resort for them. And ultimately, the judge ruled in the parents' favor.
Okay.
And said he had to get out. But of course, they did give him a little bit of notice and
Right.
maybe give him a month or something like that. So
Right.
yeah, I often wonder what their relationship is like now, because that's rough.
I'm wondering that too, because at first when you read something like that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy and all that. But then in the end, it is pretty sad, because when your own parents have to kick you out of the house,
Yeah.
but then at the same time, why would they want him to leave? Like,
Well,
why wouldn't they want him to stay anymore?
see, now that's where it could become a little bit of a cultural thing,
Right.
because in the United States, you get to be a grown adult. A lot of times adults will stay in their parents' home, sure, but they pay rent or they contribute in some way financially to the household.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently that was not happening in this situation. And the parents, I would say rightfully, got a little frustrated. Like, you can't pay, you won't pay, you won't contribute, then out. But I know it's not like that everywhere. And I'm assuming you might have a different take on this.
Yeah. Well, I kind of see both sides to it, but I don't, I understand contributing. Obviously, it didn't seem like he had a job or
No.
anything like that, right? So I think if it was me, if it was my son, I wouldn't necessarily want him out of the house, but I would want him to have a job, to be productive person, to be, I don't know, to be just to be active, to be busy, to contribute to society, not necessarily to my household.
Exactly.
Because I'm thinking, well, right now we're raising our kid and we have to pay for everything anyway. So what's going to change? It's the same thing, right?
Right.
Because he's older and he'll eat more probably. But it's just, I feel like the issue is, why is he still unemployed? Why is he, we don't know, did he go to college, or does he have a degree, or is he just, went through high school and does nothing until he's 30? So I feel like it's just a lot bigger issue here. But
Yeah.
I feel like in my culture growing up, that would never happen.
That's what I thought.
So, and I know nowadays it's more of kids or young people, young grown up adults, are the ones who want to move out and have their own apartment or house or live separately. But like people like my mom or my parents or grandparents, of course, they wouldn't want their kids to move out. So
Right.
it's very much family together. Family stays close. You help each other, you take care of each other. There's no really. I feel like everybody contributes. I've never heard of, any of my either family, relatives, or friends saying that, well, he doesn't contribute anything. It's just kind of given. You feed
Right.
everybody, or whatever they can, they contribute or don't. So when my brother, when after I moved to the United States, my brother still lived with my parents. And he went to school and college in our hometown. So even when my brother got married at first, they still all live together in the same place,
Oh,
because
wow.
it's very expensive to rent
Yeah.
or buy. I mean, it's so usually in Ukraine, it's, parents will have an apartment or house and they kind of pass it on to their kids once they die, right? And here I notice in the States, if parents have a house, they don't necessarily pass it on for the most part. They will, either sell it or, but in my culture, it's like they buy this house or they build a house or they buy an apartment, and it's meant for the kids.
Yeah. Well, another thing I think is very different. I hear this and from a lot of people around the world that is very different about the United States. It feels like we are more of I'm going to use this word, transient sort of
Hmm.
situation where we move around a lot.
Yes.
And I don't think that we have that culture of, let me buy a house. I'm going to live my whole life in here. And then it's going to go to my kids and then whatever.
Yep.
People will buy and sell houses multiple
Yep.
times in their life. So they don't have that attachment to the
Hmm.
home like I think you might have there.
Yep. That is very much true. Because I know that, like my grandpa built a house. And my mom, like my mom and my dad, my brother, we lived on the second floor because it was like a full, there was a kitchen and bathroom and all that. And then my aunt and her family and my grandma, after my grandpa passed away, they lived on the first floor. So it was like he built a house for his kids, for his families that were going to stay in town.
That's
So
nice.
it's, yeah. Yeah. But it just, I, I think things are changing though. I think more
Yeah.
people are moving to bigger cities, and a lot of people also, I noticed in recent, I want to say a decade or two, a lot of people went abroad to get jobs and make money to help support families in Ukraine. So they would send money home to buy that apartment or house for their kids.
Right.
And then when they come back, they would stay with them. So but I know in some other cultures too, it's not unusual that families live together even after kids, let's say, graduate from college or school and get married and have kids. They still live, grandma and grandpa are right there.
Yeah, I feel like that is the the thing that I see most common with my students when I talk to them about their home life. It's like that. The grown kids are at home, and it's just so
Yeah.
different from how it is here. Kids here, they just want to get out. They don't, you know what I mean? They don't want to have any rules or anybody telling them what to do, but they kind of liked mom and dad's money
Well,
paying for things. So there's that problem. So that might be why they don't get out immediately, because it is expensive.
it is
So
expensive.
yeah, I think they're staying here. They're staying with their parents much longer than they used to, but
Yeah.
the expectation is always that they got to contribute. There's none of this,
Right.
you know, here's a nice word, freeloading, that you just get everything for free and don't have to work
And then,
for it.
yeah. Yeah.
So
And the thing is that I've never really experienced this issue growing up because I don't know, maybe it's the cultural mentality that, a man has to provide, right? So a husband or a father, if they still have a job, they will make sure that they provide and, either food or utilities or like, I mean, it wasn't ever that, oh, no, you don't buy anything, you just live here for free or whatever. They wouldn't
yeah,
necessarily pay rent, but
right.
everybody in the house would contribute
Yeah, like you
towards.
said, there's just sort of an unspoken expectation. And
Yeah.
I think that's sort of here too, that we would expect that someone would help out with something. But so that's why the story was kind of funny because, you know, 30-year-old guy just thought he could really live for free and not do
Yeah.
anything. And that's a little bit more than we like to see in this culture.
Right. So funny thing is, when my husband and I sometimes talk about our son, if he's going to go to college away or he wants to stay in here, and he is at the age where he just pretty much happy being with us wherever we are. He wants to be there, right?
That's nice.
Still at that age.
Yeah.
We'll see how long that lasts.
Yeah, you gotta take that as long as you can.
Yeah. So I remember when we moved into this house where we're at. I don't know, maybe a year or so. He was looking in the basement, and you saw our basement is not finished, but there's space in there and all that.
Right.
And I remember we were doing something down there, and he was kind of looking around, and he goes, are you guys ever gonna finish this basement? And we're like, why? He goes, this is the perfect place for me to stay.
Oh, okay. He's making
He
plans.
was already making plans. But it's
Smart.
interesting because we both want him to go to college and all that, but my husband is very determined that he goes to college away somewhere. Like he doesn't want him, because there's 2 universities here and I work at the college. There's a lot of places for him to go here, but my husband really wants him to go away. Like he wants him to leave home to experience that
Right.
independence, being by himself, and and all that. So
It's true because, I made a little joke earlier about adulting is hard,
it is hard.
but it really is. But
Yeah,
they need that independence, that opportunity to figure stuff out, to learn how to
yeah,
do things. So for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. That's why I was
Yeah.
wondering about this 30-year-old guy. I was like, that he's still at home, and
Yeah.
who knows? Who knows what the story is behind that?
Yeah.
Oh,
So yeah, anyway, I wanted to say that this article, I will link that in the show notes. As always, I forget to talk
okay.
about the show notes, but you guys go to the show notes because we're going to have some vocabulary. The article that I'm going to link to, I thought it had a lot of pretty good vocabulary, so I'll put something in there as well. And definitely check out those anytime you can see an article online. A blog post, things like that. Those are so great to read because you're
Yes.
going to get a ton of great vocabulary expressions, things that we say, informally. So definitely check those out.
Right.
So yeah, that's that. This was a fun conversation. I wasn't exactly sure where we're going to go with this because, as we've said before, these are unscripted conversations.
Yeah.
So we just let it go where it
That's
takes us.
right. And you know what? Maybe we can do another episode on housing, because I think there's so much to it too. Not
Yeah.
necessarily like living in the same household or not, but just, we started talking about apartment and the vocabulary about that and all the different things. But there's also so much about buying a house and finding a
Oh,
house and
yeah.
living in a house. So who knows? Maybe it will lead us to another conversation about that someday.
Absolutely. That sounds good.
So, all
Well,
right.
until next time, here's to good coffee, good vibes, and great conversation. Cheers.
Cheers.